Welcome to Beyond the Barn with Doc Sanders and our guest today, Todd Woodruff, a local dairy farmer. Todd produces and packages dairy products and meat for his store in Urbana, Ohio, with a special thank you to Farmers Equipment Company.
We milk Jersey cows, have for several years, milking on average 40 cows, give or take. And we use our milk, we process it, we bottle it. We're currently making ice cream and moving into the cheese. And so we're truly from farm to table.
Yeah. Okay. And Doc, you know a little something about dairy farms?
Yes, I've grown up with them since I was a boy. Milked cows with my father, went to veterinary college, became a dairy cow veterinarian and some other things as well, and have had a 50-year career working with cows and other animals and all kinds of setups and processes and so forth.
Well, you wrote the book, didn't you?
I actually have written 7 books on dairy cattle and a couple on pigs, and even got one on stories for those that are interested.
Gotcha.
Our plan here is to go straight from way back straight to the robot, and that's our plan. Our next move will be to the robot system. Yeah.
For still 40 head?
But well, 50 to 60 jerseys is what one robot is basically rated for, depending on production. But so we'll need to increase headage a little bit, but in our case, it's going to take. You have to worry about the marketing side and moving the product also.
Yeah.
But in order to make us sustainable in what we're doing, we need to be in that 50 to 60 head range.
Gotcha. Is that the size of most farms that are dairy farms that are going right from the field to right direct to consumer?
Well,
a pretty big question.
I'll say kind of yes, but most dairies today have went straight to 1,000 plus.
And to give you an idea, one of the great organic herds in this country that produces quality milk in Aurora, Colorado, are milking 27,000 cows. And they utilize robots, and they use what's called a Rotary Parlor. And those cows, people go, oh, that's too big. And there are issues with that, when in fact, the care on this farm is very much like the care that you'd expect from the Woodruff Farm. Todd's cows get a lot of individual attention. The cows on these big farms, while it isn't always a person that's involved, but for instance, their temperature's getting taken every milking when they come through the parlor, and they're monitored a number of different ways like that.
Okay.
Now, see, this is the other thing that kind of is rare today. This is what you would call loose housing. Most dairies today are going to have freestalls, individual freestalls, comfort stalls, whatever you want to call them. This is much more labor intense, as Doc was talking about. We use shavings for our bedding, which creates expense. The good side of loose housing is footing and comfort and all of that, but the freestalls, comfort stalls today, they're also very good. But this is everything about this facility is more labor intense.
Yeah.
And then the thing about freestalls, and I should explain a little bit about that, is that they're called freestalls because the cow can come up and lay down in them whenever they want. She's free to lay down whenever she chooses. And we know that to optimize milk production, cows really need to go and eat, and they lay down about 14 hours a day and lay there, and they're ruminants, meaning that they've swallowed a whole bunch of feed, and that while they're laying there half asleep, they cough it up, rechew it.
Your herd is Jersey, and the output is A2. Is that what you said, Doc?
I don't know if it still is. That was what
yeah,
it was.
we are breeding all A2, but we don't promote as far as marketing goes for A2 because we haven't tested every cow to be sure of it. All of our cows we do know are either A1, A2, or A2, A1, or A2, A2, but we are not marketing. We're striving for it, but we're not marketing that yet.
And perhaps, Todd, why don't you explain to them about an A2 cow versus an A1 cow?
A1, A2, A2, those are two proteins within the milk. And Doc, you probably understand that more than I do, but they're two different proteins. And as a rule of thumb, when people say they're lactose intolerant, they're allergic to one of those proteins within that milk. Where if you go with A2, as a rule of thumb, they're not. It's and they, you know, as far as I'm concerned, we're a little fearful from promoting it that way because we don't know that to be a fact. But I do know this: we have two moms that come into the market and buy their milk, and they said their baby, they can drink our milk, but they can't drink other milk. So, you know, now you've heard of people being lactose intolerant and being raised on goat's milk. All goat's milk is A2. All human milk is A2. And frankly, years ago, all cows were A2.
Right.
And I don't know how that got jacked up, but it did, I guess. I can't call it jacked up.
I don't know that explanation either.
I don't know, but it's interesting how, you know, you take the mammal, and over time through breeding, that got changed. I find that interesting. Mm-hmm.
So how many calves do you have here? Are these all product of your,
right?
Do you buy these?
Or? No. Everything we raise, they're all ours. And, you know, we don't have many in here right now. Our next group will be in December. We try to hit the show months because we have a heifer sale once a year now. And we kind of breed for type and show, and we also breed for the milk, but we sell all of our heifers every year in our auction. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so these are not going to grow up for milk. These are for.
They will, but they might not be here. They'll be in our heifer sale.
Okay.
And they'll be raised for show heifers, and then once they freshen, then they'll be a milk cow. Kids. Yeah, 4-H kids.
Another interesting thing about this is they've identified the DNA on calves well enough that they can predict who is going to be high-producing animals and more efficient. And so there are many dairy farms today that check the DNA on all of their cows and can identify those cows that are going to have superior milk production. And then they use sex semen. That means semen that's designed to make girls, or heifers, if you will. And they breed those high performance animals they've identified strictly to bull semen that will result in a heifer calf. And consequently, this top 10% of the herd, they've grown produced and grown all the heifers they need for the rest of the herd. Then the other animals that do not have that DNA that they've identified in them gets bred to a beef bull, such as an Angus, and they end up as crossbred animals, which are high performance as beef animals that would go for steaks and things like this when they go to a processing plant.
Gotcha. Are you strictly dairy, or do you have any beef?
We have an Angus herd also.
Do you?
Yeah, okay. And we're striving to produce breeding stock with our Angus herd and sell the bulls to herds that we can buy those calves back and feed them out and produce our meat for the market.
Okay, so you're processing the meat too, or?
No, we don't process. We have a processor that does it for us, and then we bring that packaged product back to our market. Yeah.
Which is in your store.
Yes, in our store.
And a great place to go buy it, right?
Yep.
Along with your milk and your ice cream and everything else.
Yep. And other I'll say Ohio products, But what we're striving to do as far as our products in the store are dealing with smaller producers that, in my way of putting it, they do the work. Now, I'll tell you what, this young man, he uses our facility. Hi, how are you?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
Good, good. But he uses our facility here and makes this beef jerky. And this is like good old time beef jerky. When you tear it apart, it looks like you have paper in there, you know. This is good stuff. But that's what we're striving to do.
Food integrity and trust.
Yeah.
Is something that's really vital to you.
Yes, and we know exactly where everything comes from.
Like,
and the thing that I'd like to add to that is when you, as a consumer, identify an operation such as Todd's that raises everything from birth and harvests the meat and does all this thing all in-house, like we're talking about with Todd, is that those foods won't be as inexpensive as the commercial stuff that you'd buy at the big chain grocery store, because they have more overhead in growing that animal, whereas the big grocery stores are negotiating with large companies that can mass produce. However, the tracing that lineage of that food product isn't anything like Todd does. Todd can identify precisely where every meat and milk and that sort of thing comes from.
I'll add on our dairy here is we are feeding a non-soy ration plus a non-GMO corn within the feed, which is going to travel through the milk.
right. So non-soy, I'm familiar with it.
Non-soy, okay. We have to have a protein source.
Okay.
And I'm going to just throw out a number: 95% of your protein source, because of economics, is soybean meal. All right, we use linseed meal. We've come up with a ration that it's linseed meal, and that's our protein source instead of soybean meal.
And so you source all that locally too, don't you?
Well, actually, it comes most linseed meal. Most of it comes out of Canada.
Now, I want to add, Todd, it's admirable that he's able to do that sort of thing and feed that way, but there's positively nothing wrong with a herd that chooses to feed soybean meal.
That's right.
To their animals. And the second part of this is, even though we talk about this being non-GMO, there is nothing wrong with animals that receive GMO products. We have a segment of society that prefers to be very basic that way, and there's a special market there for that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the quality standards on those is precisely the same as here. There's certain tests that have to be done. There positively cannot be antibiotics in the milk and in the meat. And then lastly, the food supply. There is no bovine growth hormone, BST, some people would know it as. There is positively none that's used on dairy cows in this country for that sort of thing. Now, in 1994, it was discovered that bovine somatotropin, BST, would aid in increasing the feed intake of cows and dairy cows. The natural genetics is that if you get them to eat more feed, like 10% more feed, you're going to get 10 or 15% more milk. And so there was some stimulus there to do that. However, the consumer let the dairy industry know they weren't interested in products where additional BST or bovine somatotropin was given to cows. The fact is, though, BST occurs naturally in a cow.
Mm-hmm.
What they were doing was injecting additional BST that didn't increase milk production. It increased feed intake, and increased feed intake increased milk production.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. You want to talk about your milk shed, or you want to talk? What do you want to talk about next?
Makes no difference. Our whole barn here was built by my great grandpa, and we're still using it just like he did, except for these calf pens. This is where the draft horses used to be.
So
But
this barn's better than 100 years old then.
yeah, really, this is not the best way to raise calves. I mean, the best way to raise calves is in a hutch outside.
It's like a small doghouse.
Yeah.
And formerly we believed in raising them individually. That way there was no disease transmission between them. And now we know that socially calves do better if there's 2 calves per hutch, which is about the size of a big doghouse.
And outside.
Yes.
For airflow. But we, you know, we take pretty good care of our calves. We get along good, but preferably they're outside in the hutch.
So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Yeah, and when we have a glut of them, like in December, we've got 20 cows due to freshen, so it gets a little full in here. But once they're 8 weeks old, they get weaned, and then we move them out and take them to our other barn.
So your cows nurse your calves, which is the best situation?
No. They're taken off of the cow at birth, and you know, because that's your milk production that is going into the tank. The calves then, after they've gotten sufficient colostrum, which is probably the number 1 single most important thing,
no doubt,
is the colostrum.
That's
and
the initial market.
The first thing that goes into their belly, that needs to be that colostrum.
And the colostrum is where the newborn calf gets all of its antibodies and its disease resistance until it can make its own antibodies internally in its bloodstream. And they don't do that till they're 4 to 6 months old. And so that colostrum off that initial feeding, and you like to get it into them in 2 to 4 hours after they're born, although it still works at 6 or 8 hours. But if you get out much longer than that, the ability for that calf to absorb those antibodies in that colostrum decreases. So it's really important that those calves get that initial boost from that first milk that's loaded with antibodies, loaded with nutrients, loaded with vitamin A, and get that into them as quickly as you can after they're born. And that will give them the immunity they need to last till 4 to 6 months when they start producing adequate amounts of their own antibodies.
And so these antibodies are only manufactured by the mother, by the cow. These aren't artificial that are injected in. These are strictly generated.
Let me add to this a little. The calves don't start producing those antibodies until about 4 months. However, if we get a calf with a disease problem and we perceive that the mom's milk didn't have adequate quality for that calf to be that, there are companies that purchase colostrum from herds, extract the antibodies out of it, and put it in a powder that is supercharged, if you will. And if you get a calf that didn't get adequate antibodies, or you know that mom had an infection or something and the quality of the colostrum wasn't good, dairy farmers can purchase quantities of this colostrum already pasteurized, all ready to use. They just add water to it, and they can supply them with those supply the newborn calf with those antibodies they need, that the dairy farmer managing the herd knows that calf didn't get what it needs as soon as it was born.
This is a regular program of Great Folks and Good Stories channel. Thank you, Farmers Equipment of Urbana, Elida, Lakeview, Lisbon, Upper Sandusky, and Delaware for underwriting the creator's ongoing work on Great Folks and Good Stories. This program was created by Dave Greenlee and Giva, LLC, because we believe in great folks and their good stories. There's a better day tomorrow because of you. Please visit farmersesq.com to see all the great people at Farmers Equipment, Woodruff Farms to see Todd's great folks are up to, and Doc's site to check out a wonderful book, Beyond the Barn, at VACA Resources, VACA Resources.com. I'm Dave Greenlee, and thank you for joining. Peace on your journey with grace. Please ask questions, share comments, any concerns that you might have. Please subscribe or follow my channels wherever you may be, YouTube, TikTok, or Instagram. Goodbye now.